Right. So just to manage everything for today's live session, because there's not a whole panel of staff members today or other lecturers that lecture with me on the module, I will have to handle all the questions myself. So I thought that it would be best to use the question and answer facility that you have on your screens. And then at about, I think I've got about 3 or 4 places in the actual lecture where a little picture like this will come up on my slide, which means that I will then allow questions, or I will then answer the questions that's already there in the question and answer facility. I think this is just to manage everything and to make sure that you know, that things run smoothly, right? So you will see that I'm going to start off by just revising some of the dates for assignments coming up. And so after certain sections of the work, I'm going to allow for questions, and then right at the end, I will allow for questions. So can I please ask that, for instance, when I've done the assignment section, to keep your questions to that particular section of work that I've covered. At the end, I will allow you to ask other questions that was not related to the PowerPoint, if we could stick to that. Thank you. So let's start. Right, so the first thing that I just want to basically remind you about is that you have quite a few assignments that are due on the 27th of May, which is next week. Obviously, you do know that the due date is the 27th of May at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then obviously you do have the 24-hour grace period, which means that the portals will all close on the 28th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So students, please don't wait until the last minute, and please don't wait until the last 10 minutes before your submission, and then you sending emails and you're frantic because you can't find the portal and you're battling with that. And then, I don't know, some of you expect me to sit at my computer 24 hours a day, and I won't be there to help and to make sure that you get your assessment in on time. So please try to do this by the 27th so that you've got the 28th until 2 o'clock to sort out any problems if you have any problems. But just to make sure that we're all on the same page, you do have formal writing activity 3, 4 and 5, that is due now. The DVD viewing questions that you have to answer, then the maths video game, and the 5th assignment is an online quiz based on academic readings. And then you also have 9 developmental or informal activities that you have to complete. Those are basically the activities that I would normally do with my contact learning students in the lecture. So yes, so please make sure that you complete all of the developmental or informal activities as well. It's very important because you will get at least 1 mark. I think one of them is 2 marks, but you get 1 mark or 2 marks for actually completing those 9 activities. So in the end, you will get 10 marks if you completed all 9 developmental activities. 2 of those activities will be marked, but unfortunately you don't know which 2, right? So otherwise you will just do those and not the rest. So, so yes, unfortunately you won't know that, but 2 of them will be given marks, so they will actually count towards your formal activities in the end, right? And then a few students have been asking the question about the ITP assessment booklet. They wanted to know if they have to submit the ITP assessment booklet, and the answer is no. All submissions of assignments for TP200 is online, and therefore I have created portals for all 5 formal writing activities, and for the 9 individual developmental activities. So each developmental activity has its own portal where you have to go and submit. So please make sure that you submit in the correct space, because I've had many requests of reopening portals because students submitted incorrect assignments into incorrect portals. So please make sure about that. So you will keep your assessment, ITP assessment booklet. That will be yours for referencing. Right, so before I continue now with the TP session, are there any questions about the assignments that you may want me to answer? I'll just wait for a second or two, nothing. Right, so if something pops up in your mind now, you can always ask that question at the end when I get to the end of the PowerPoint. So let's continue then. So you are almost done with the ITP section of the TP200 module. You have been working through your study guide, you've been working through the 10 lessons, you've been working in your ITP assessment booklet, completing the developmental and the formal writing activities. And so you're almost done with that. After submitting that question, the formal activities and the developmental activities on the 27th, you are basically done with the ITP section. So what's left is the teaching practice section. So as from term 3, you will be involved in teaching practice, and you will be using your portfolio of evidence for school-based teaching practice booklet. It's a small little booklet, looks like this. It's not really a booklet because it's only stapled at the top of the one corner, and I will explain later why that's the case. But this is the booklet that you will be working with now from after the July school holidays. So a few things to just talk about teaching practice in general before we look at specific aspects. And the one thing is, as you know, we are currently still in phase 4 of lockdown, and also important is that we don't really know what's going to happen with the schools going forward. You may know that the Minister of Education announced earlier this week that the schools will reopen for matrics and for grade 7s, but as far as I know, there hasn't been an announcement for grade R's to grade 1 to 3. So at this stage, we don't really know if you will be able to go back to schools. And even if the schools are open, we are not sure if the schools will be hosting students. So unfortunately, we don't know that. And unfortunately, we will only have a plan B when we know exactly when the schools will open and if they will open. So for now, we are anticipating the fact that the schools will be open and they will be able to go to school. Right. So prac starts in term 3. So you can, depending on when the schools reopen, you can go to school straight away. You will have to finish your teaching practice by the 18th of September. That is the final day for teaching practice. So from the start of term 3 up until the 18th of September, you have to fit in a 6-week block prac. Right. So with regards to the willingness to host form and the willingness to host reply form, I had quite a few questions about this a while back. But obviously you were supposed to sort this out by April, but because of the lockdown, many of you did not get to this. So don't stress, you don't have to be concerned about that, because we've given you extension to submit or to take your willingness to host form to the school, to get the principal to complete the willingness to host reply form, and to then send that to Stadio. Right. So there will be an extended period for you to complete this. Some of you may still have to find a school when the schools reopen, and then you will have to get the willingness to host form to the school, and you'll have to ask the principal to complete the willingness to host reply form, and the principal will then have to email that to Stadio, to the teaching practice department. So when you arrive at school eventually, you will hand over the mentor guide as one of the books that you receive from Wise Books. You will hand that over to your mentor teacher, because everything he or she needs to know about your teaching practice is in that little booklet. So that will be handed over to her. And as I've already mentioned, you will be using that portfolio of evidence for school-based teaching practice booklet going forward. Yes, a very important note that you should be aware of, and that is that unfortunately Wise Books printed that booklet incorrectly. They were asked to not print any of those documents in the book back to back. They were supposed to be all printed on separate pages, but unfortunately Wise Books made an error and they printed those documents back to back. This could be a problem because you may find that one document needs to be in a division in your file, and the document at the back of that page may be in a different division. You may need to put that document in a different division in your file when you start your teaching practice. I think you will have a better understanding after I've spoken about the files. But if that's the case, if you've got 2 pages that's back to back and they need to be in different sections of your file under different divisions, then you may have to make a copy of one of those pages to get it into the correct place under the correct division in your file. So there's basically 3 aspects that will count towards your mark, your final mark for the year. And these are also basically the 3 things that you will be involved in, or that the school will eventually have to send to us at the end of your teaching practice. And the first thing is your POE, or your portfolio of evidence, or we normally just refer to the teaching practice file. So that's your TP file or your POE, which you will have to keep now while you're busy with your prac. And I'm going to talk about these 3 points individually now. So your file has a 15% weighting in the end towards your final mark for teaching practice, right? And then also your ITP booklet, the booklet that you've just, well, almost completed now with all those developmental and formal activities in it. That booklet is, sorry, I just want to grab my diary. That booklet also has a 15% weighting. So the 2 together has a 30% weighting towards your final mark at the end of the year. Then also another component of your teaching practice will actually be the teaching of lessons in the classroom that will be assessed by your mentor teacher and will also be assessed and moderated by Stadio, which I will explain shortly. This has a 20% weighting. And then the overall teaching performance assessment. This is a part of your assessment that the school is responsible for. They will complete this document, which I will also elaborate on. They will complete this document, and this has a 50% weighting. So it's quite a big weighting, and I will discuss some important aspects about this document in the coming slides. So now, as I've already mentioned, we are now going to look at some requirements for your portfolio, what you have to do with regards to your lesson assessments, and then also shortly discuss that document, the final teaching performance assessment that the school will do. So let's start off with the portfolio of evidence. And after I've discussed the portfolio of evidence, that little sign with the questions will come up. So if you have questions about the TP in general that I've already mentioned, or the portfolio, now will be the time to type those questions, and then I will answer that as soon as we finish this section. So the first thing about the POE, or the portfolio of evidence, that you need to know is the fact that you will have to buy a LeverArch file for TP. You are going to have to complete quite a few documents and quite a few lessons, and you'll have to put your resources in there. So therefore, it will not be suitable to just use a ring binder. You will definitely need a LeverArch file. And you may still have your file from last year, so just keep that file and maybe, or buy a new file for your second year. So you will gradually fill your file up with the evidence of your teaching. And students, also very important is the fact that this year you will not create your file to Stadio. You will submit your file online to Stadio at the end of your teaching practice. The details about that and how you will do it, I will provide you with that information probably more towards the start of the holiday. And I mean, you will only submit your file, I think it's on the 14th of October, if I remember correctly. So you still have lots of time to work on it. But what I want to say for now is work on your file and put your documents in your file. But because you're submitting it online, it will also mean that whatever you put inside your file, like for instance, a register or a lesson plan, or a daily planner, etc., it means that you'll have to save those documents on your laptop. So if you're going to handwrite or fill in those documents that you're required to do, that's fine. You can write them out, but then you'll have to make copies, save that on your laptop, and obviously then you will have to submit that. You'll have to scan them before you save them if you're going to go the handwriting route. Okay, but the point is, because you're submitting online, you will have to have an electronic version of whatever goes into your file and not just the hard copies that's inside your file. Next point. I've already mentioned your school-based teaching practice booklet. It's a very long word to say every time. I think I'm just going to refer to your teaching practice booklet. That's the one that I showed you earlier in the little view there where you can see me. That's the one with the staple at the one, I think, the left-hand corner. So this booklet was stapled and not bound like all your other booklets, because it has all the documents that you will need to complete your teaching practice is in this little booklet. And what you are going to do now is you will be taking the documents or tearing the pages from this booklet, completing them, and putting them into your teaching practice file. So that is the reason for the staple holding that little booklet together, and why we didn't bind that into a little booklet. So that's what you will be doing. That TP little booklet will be basically pulled apart now, and you will be completing the documents and the forms in that booklet as you go along with your teaching practice, and you will be putting those documents into your file. When you've completed the document, scan it and save it onto your computer for your electronic submission. Right, so you will have your own hard copy of your file in the end, but you will upload an electronic version. Continuing with the POE. So you will have to buy or make yourself 5 file dividers. You can just use cardboard, and you get these different colored cardboards, so you don't have to go and buy the fancy ones, the plastic ones that you get from CNA or B&A or any of those stores. You can make your own from cardboard. So you will have to make 5 dividers, and you will see that I've given you the page numbers there on the slide of where you can go and revise what's needed for your POE. So if you go back to your study guide and you look at lesson 1, you will see that in that section about an introduction to teaching practice from pages 28 to 24, everything about your practice explained there as well. So you will find your file requirements in there, and you will find the file dividers, all of that information is there. So you may have to go back to that section in your study guide. If you get to those documents now in your teaching practice booklet and you can't quite remember how to fill in the daily planner, or you can't quite remember how to fill in your non-teaching duties document, you can go back to lesson 1 of your study guide to remind yourself or to revise quickly. What's expected of me with this daily planner? What is expected of me with regards to the non-teaching duties, etc., etc. But the 5 dividers are, now I can't think of the word. Now I'm a blank now. I can't think of the first word that I need. So that's basically the documents that includes your study letter and your timetable and things like administration. Thank you. That's the word that I was thinking of. So your admin is your first division. Your second division is your formal lessons. So those are the ones that will be assessed for marks. Your third division is your informal lessons. So they are not for marks. And then you have a reflection section, and you've got a general section. So there's 5 divisions, and therefore you'll have to have the 5 dividers in your file. So please go and peruse those pages 28 to 44 of your study guide again. Now maybe you've submitted your final assignments, you'll be able to go back to that to just quickly reinforce what you worked through in lesson 1 before you start doing your practice. Okay. And yes, so just remember to scan everything that you complete, to save it on your laptop, to keep that so that you can eventually upload your file electronically. Okay. So let's see. I think there's one question I can see that thus far. So this was a question about the activities earlier. The person asked if they could save the activities as a PDF after scanning. You can, but we actually do prefer that you save it as a Word document, because then it's the markers option of marking your activity by using track changes or by using the Acrobat. So it's more difficult, because then it forces the marker to use Acrobat to mark your PDF saved activities. So it limits the markers option of marking. And what I've also found, I've actually, this morning before I started the session, I was actually marking my contact learning students' lessons. And the students saved it as the PDF format, but I was not able to mark it. So it is sometimes a problem. We can mark some of those PDF scanned assignments, but it's not always possible for us to mark them. And it gives us more options of how we want to mark them if you provide us with a Word format. I hope that answered your question. Right, so there's another question from Mandy. Would we put the photos of resources in the Word document as we did for our life skills lesson plan? Yes, Mandy, absolutely. We also advise our contact learning students to do that instead of putting your hand puppets and your posters and your flashcards and any of your lovely resources that you made into your file, which makes it very bulky. And we often lose that if we mark a hard copy of the file. So we also ask our contact learning students to rather take photographs of their resources and then submit that. So you'll have to scan your photos or your pictures of your resources and then put that with your file. So when you've created your lesson plan, you will have your lesson plan with the attached resources to that lesson plan, and that will be submitted as one lesson plan. Correct? You said like you did for your life skills lesson plan, just like you did for your life skills lesson plan. So you will add your resources to the lesson plan. Okay. Any other questions about the file? No questions about the file at this stage? Okay, so let's continue. So now we're going on to the lessons being taught. So during your teaching practice, you will have to teach 14 lessons. So of the 14 lessons, 4 of those lessons are referred to as formal lessons. They will come in a separate division in your file. Remember, I mentioned the divisions earlier, and one of the divisions, your second division, is formal lessons. So your formal lessons will be the 4 lessons that your mentor teacher at your school assessed. So that means that she will use a document called Prac 203, which is in your TP booklet, and it's also in her mentor guide. She will use that document to give marks for your planning and your presentation of your lesson. So in that section of your file, you will put your 4 formal lessons, and you will also put your assessments of your lesson with your lesson. So when we look at your lesson, I can see that you did a life skills lesson. This is the mark that you received from your mentor teacher. These were the comments that she gave you with regards to the lesson. So I will elaborate on the formal lesson plans just now. I'm going to tell you exactly what you have to do there. You will also have to do 10 informal lessons, and that gives you the total of 14 lessons. Your 10 informal lessons with their resources goes into division 3 of your file. So that goes into a separate division. And please, can I ask you not to keep your resources separate? You're not going to be allowed to submit all hundreds of resources that you used across your 6 week of block practice separately. We don't have the time to see, okay, well, yeah, we have a lesson, but now I have to go and look through all your resources to try and figure out which of these you use with your lesson. So your resources must be saved with your lesson plan, the photos of that on your laptop, obviously. So the 4 lessons that I referred to will have to include the following. So please take note. Please make sure that you stick to these requirements, because I saw now with the marking of your lesson plans that some of you didn't stick to the instructions. You basically chose your own topic, you chose your own term, you did what you want, you didn't stick to the instructions. And unfortunately, some of you failed because of that. So for your 4 lessons, you will have to teach a life skills lesson. And please remember, I should have added that on the slide. Please remember that that can only be from the content area of beginning knowledge and personal and social well-being. You cannot do an art lesson for a formal lesson, and you cannot do a PES lesson for a formal lesson. You can do an art lesson for an informal lesson, but I also don't want to see more than 2 in your file. PES lessons, I would advise you not to do those, because you'll only be taught how to do that in your 3rd year, and you will probably be expected to do a PES lesson in your 3rd year. So I would not advise doing a pairs lesson because you have not been taught how to do that yet. So life skills, stick to beginning knowledge and personal and social well-being content area. Then your second lesson must be, or doesn't have to be in that particular order, but your second lesson must be the home language lesson. And then the third one, maths lesson. So you can see that we're covering the 3 subjects. And then your fourth one will then be a choice. So you can choose whether you want to do an extra life skills, home language, or maths lesson as your fourth lesson. So that will be up to you. So students, if you want full details about these lessons, you will find that from page 7 to 42 in your school-based book, in your teaching practice booklet, sorry, yeah. So you will find all the details there. So this is just like a summary of those 4 lessons, but more details in your teaching practice booklet on those particular pages. So all the lesson templates, your assessment forms, the rubrics that your mentor teacher will use, the descriptor that they will use to assist them, to guide them to decide whether they should give you a 1, 2, 3, or a 4, or a 5 for your assessment. All of that is also in this section. So it's not a mystery. It's not a thing of, oh my goodness, now I don't know what this teacher is going to look for. I don't know what she's going to ask of me, what she wants. Everything is there. You can look at the rubric, you can look at the descriptor so that you can see what is expected of you. So it's not a mystery. Please look at those rubrics. Then also very important is the fact that the Embry, or the Stadia rather, the Stadia, although in your booklets we refer to the Embry Mentor Assessment Panel and we talk about MAP. So we will have to come up with a new acronym there. So you will see I will be talking about MAP a lot while you're doing your teaching practice. So please make sure that you know what it is. So it basically refers to the panel that will be assessing your lesson plans. So yes, you are required to select 2 of the formal lessons that you did. And you will have to get the support of your mentor teacher to help you to get everything together that's required of you to do the 2 MAP submissions. So I'm going to explain to you now exactly what's required of MAP 1 and MAP 2. And this will then be what you will have to submit to us. So yes, I think let's go on to the next slide and then I can explain that. Then you will know what I'm talking about. So for MAP 1, what you're going to do there is that you will be submitting at the end of your 2nd week of teaching practice. You will upload the following onto ECI. Those portals have already been created, but I won't open it now. I will open it later on as soon as we know in school I can set the dates, etc. So what you will upload is the following. So for MAP 1, you have to upload a life skills lesson. You don't have a choice. Life skills lesson assessed by your mentor teacher. So your life skills lesson must be submitted. The photos or the pictures of your resources must be with the lesson plan, like you submitted your assessment formal writing activity 2. You also have to submit an audio recording of your lesson. And you also have to submit an audio recording of a post-lesson discussion with your mentor. So what does that mean? That means that after your formal lesson, your mentor teacher will sit with you and she will discuss your lesson with you, what was good and what you have to improve on. So that discussion, we refer to that as a post-lesson discussion. And we would like to hear an audio recording. Students, the reason why we're doing this is because of the fact that we are not going out into your schools to assess you like we would with our contact learning students. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to bring your classroom to Stadio. So we're trying to bring what's happening in your class to us. We can't do a video because there's a lot of issues regarding ethics and learners in photographs, etc. So that's why we have to go the audio route. So a recording of your lesson, so I can listen to what you taught. I can't see it, but I can at least listen to your interaction, how you used your resources, how you explain the facts, how you explain the activities, etc., etc. And then also the audio recording of the post-lesson discussion is important, because then I can hear what your mentor teacher enjoyed about your lesson, and also what she suggested, where she may have felt that there was some shortfalls, so she may make certain recommendations. And then the other, or the last part that you will have to also submit is the Prac 203 that I referred to earlier. This is the form that your mentor teacher will complete when she assesses you. So that Prac 203 will show me your marks for your planning, for your presentation, and will show me the comments and the suggestions that your teacher made. So all of that will be submitted as map 1. So that's after week 2 of your teaching practice. And this basically means that within your first, early second, or early in your second week, you have to teach your first life skills lesson plan for marks. So let's look at what map 2 wants of you. So for map 2, and this will happen at the end of the 4th week of your teaching practice. So now you have a choice. You can either upload a language lesson or a maths lesson, yeah? Once again, with the photos or the pictures of your resources. Once again, with the audio recording of the lesson. Once again, with a recording of the post-lesson discussion with your mentor. And also with the assessment form. So it's quite a lot that you have to do, but it's only for those 2 lessons that you have to have the audio recordings for the lessons and the post-lesson discussions. But you will have to discuss this quite early in the first few days that you're at the school, because of the fact that it happens at the end of the 2nd week and at the end of the 4th week that we will need this. And this year there will be deadlines for these documents, or these map 1 and 2 documents. And if you did not submit by that deadline, these maps will not be marked. And if you remember correctly, in the beginning, when I referred to the weightings, I said that this has a 20% weighting towards your final mark. So map 1 and map 2 combined will give you 20% of your mark at the end of the year. So, questions about the lesson plans or the map 1 and map 2? No questions? Right, so let's go on. So this is the last bit that I'm going to discuss, and this is the overall teaching performance assessment, which I referred to earlier. This is the document that the school will complete, and you will find that that's right at the back of that teaching practice booklet that I showed you earlier. It's from page 76 to 80. I see there's a question. Let me quickly answer that, and then I'll continue. If we complete map 1 or 2 before the end of the week, we can submit before the end of the week, or must we rather submit at the end of the week? Oh no, Chloe, it doesn't matter. If you're ready, you know, if you've done everything and you want to submit it, you can. I will open the portals for those submissions probably at the start of, you know, the first day after the July holidays, that the learners will be back in school, so that I know, because some students will go to school within the first week of prac. Other students start later in the term. So I will open it from the first day that we go back to school, or that the learners go back to school, and it will be open then until the end of week 4. Okay, so that's not a problem at all. Thank you for your question. Right, so let's get back to the overall teaching assessment. So the last pages, 76 to 80 to be specific, in that little booklet that I showed you earlier. This document can be completed by the principal, the HOD, and the mentor. They can sit together and complete it. It depends on the school. It's all up to them. I think in some schools that the mentor teacher completes it, but they normally sit together. Please familiarize yourself with the criteria on this document, students, because this has a 50% weighting. So if the school gives you very good marks, it will be very difficult to fail this module because it's 50% of your weighting. Sorry. So please make sure that you are familiar with the criteria, because you'll see that some of the marks goes towards professionalism. So that includes things like your dress code. Are you punctual? Are you involved in the life of the school? Or are you the first one out of the gate every afternoon? Things like that. So you can look at the criteria and you can see what is expected of you. And then the second part, the biggest part of that document, there you will be assessed on your ability to plan and present lessons. So everything that has to do with that is completed in the second part of that document. So please look at the criteria so that you know what the school will be looking for when they assess you. And then this is a confidential document, and therefore it means that the school will, after completing it, the school will email that document to Stadio, to the teaching practice department, because it is a confidential document. Right, so I think we have about 2 minutes left. So let's see if we have a few more questions. There's a few more questions. Let's see. Charisse, the lessons, do they have to be according to term 3, how our mentor teacher works with their lesson themes, or can we choose our lessons but still according to term 3? Charisse, sorry. You will have to be guided by your mentor teacher, but it makes sense to me that if you're in school in term 3, that you will be teaching term 3 topics from the CAPS document. You can't just choose what you feel like teaching. You have to stick to and be guided by the CAPS document and what is being taught in term 3. So yes, I think you definitely have to follow term 3 CAPS document, and also be guided by your mentor teacher. Your mentor teacher will probably tell you what lessons she would like you to teach. Anusha, is there any possibility of an extension? Most of us had to get used to the new normal of lockdown. We're still dealing with first semester modules, even if you can extend it to the end of May. Anusha, I assume you're talking about the assignments that are due next week on the 27th, and unfortunately there will not be an extension. All the dates were revised, and Mrs. Kirshner of the QA department approved all dates, and unfortunately the markers also need a month to mark the material in your ITP booklet so that we can get it back to you before you start your prac. So unfortunately there won't be any extension. Any other questions? I think time is up. Yep.
Teresa, no questions on YouTube.
No questions on YouTube. Okay, I don't see any other questions. I think I've answered all of them. So that's it. Thank you, students, and all the best with your assignments for next week. And thank you, Simon. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, Teresa, for a great session. Have a lovely weekend.
Thanks. Bye.